A new era is upon us. Tangent Proptech unites founders, real estate and VC investors, urban leaders, and passionate creators who are improving our communities and cities. Join venture capitalists Jeffrey Berman and Zach Aarons and Proptech entrepreneur Edward Cohen, that's me, to learn about housing innovation, the future of work, and climate tech. We examine these themes through interviews and conversations with Proptech CEOs, real estate owners and operators, and venture investors, and how we can leverage tech and collaboration to help solve the housing crisis, figure out the future of work, and how to decarbonize the built environment. If you would like to get your company's or organization's mission featured on Tangent, email us at tangentcommunity@gmail.com. Hi, I'm Edward Cohen. Welcome to Tangent.
Hey there, Jeffrey Berman. It is awesome to be here today in Florida.
I'm also Jeffrey Berman, but I'm in New York and I'm an AI.
Today on Tangent, we have a true PropTech force, a multi-time founder who's been helping reshape and improve multifamily operations for a while. Caren Maio, CEO and co-founder of Get100. Fast track approvals, cut fraud, and rent smarter.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna go on a tangent right away. I think you should have said we have a legend. Legend. Before she says anything, a legend.
You are insanely biased. All of you are insanely biased. That's very kind. I think it's just a very nice way of saying old lady of PropTech.
Yeah, that too.
Thank you.
Age is just a number, and besides 100 being a great number to aspire to in all aspects of multifamily and life, as well as giving your SEO team a real headache, what's behind the name?
Behind the name, 100% confidence, right? That's what we want to deliver to real estate renting. So think of it as like on the consumer side, 100% good to go. On the operator side, 100% security, 100% confidence in what you're doing.
That's awesome. Before we begin, shout out to my co-hosts from another mother, Jeff and Zach, for winning Inman's Best of PropTech Award 2024. Also worth highlighting, friends of Tangent PropTech, Mike Schneider from Acre, Ryan Fraser and Alejandro Chosa from Arrived, Ronak Singh from Rome for winning in the alternative financing category, Austin Allison from Pacaso in the entrepreneur category, and of course, Spencer Raskoff from 75 and Sunny, and Fifth Wall's Brendan Wallace, who joined Jeff and Zach as winners in the venture capital category. Besides celebrating great founders and entrepreneurs in our industry, these lists are great because you learn about companies you didn't even know were still around. So cheers, Inman. What does the award look like, guys?
I haven't received it physically yet. I'm still waiting for a Brinks truck is supposed to be driving down 39th Street, heavily secured. They're going to text me a passcode, and then I'm going to go down and retrieve it. I may have to jump off this podcast to do that. I don't know what it looks like. At this point, I've just seen it in email, but thank you. And thank you to Inman for granting me this award. And I'm looking forward to attending the now Inman-owned Blueprint Conference in Vegas next year.
That's right. And by the way, Zach, they gave me a wallet full of Bitcoin. So
wow.
I don't know. Yeah, it's like, hey, now I can retire because Bitcoin makes so much sense right now.
Well, this is a little known fact, but when Jeff and I were last at the Blueprint Conference together, Jeff checked into his hotel room. I'm not going to mention the hotel. And there was actually poop in the toilet when
I remember that.
In.
I remember that.
And so that was indicative of how the rest of the conference was going to go for all of us.
Was that a spoiler alert? Foreshadowing?
Zach, I'd forgotten about that.
You would purge it from your brain. Yes. I'm here as a human catalog of PropTech history going from the Neolithic era until today. That is my job in the sector.
That's why you won the award.
That's why I won the award. It was actually the top PropTech historian award.
There was a section for it. I think if you scroll all the way down, Edward, I think you'll be able to see it. But that's technically the headline he was in.
And we have Caren today for many, many reasons, but the prime reason is that her company's name 100 and Bitcoin is about to cross 100,000. So thank you, Caren. Thank you for everything you do.
Of course. Yeah. I thought my job here was to keep these two in line, but happy to add something else.
Good luck.
Onto the roles and responsibilities of today.
Caren, please, can you bless us and share your journey leading up to founding Get100 and what inspired you to address renter fraud specifically?
It's sort of always been a bit of like a handshake deal I've had with friendly multifamily operators in the space of, hey, let's stay close. Let's talk to each other about what we're seeing and hearing in the space. And if we can help each other, let's do that. So it's funny, off the back of my time at Moved, I was taking some time to decompress, recalibrate, and I received quite a few operators who took me up on it, and they all took me up on it in like a very short period of time. So I received a bunch of emails that basically said, hey, Caren, how are you? Currently really struggling and looking for a collection agency. Can you help me out? And I received a few of these in like a 3-week span. And I said, let's learn more about that. So I hopped on some discovery calls and ultimately kind of keyed in on really what the challenge was that multifamily was experiencing an epidemic when it came to debt and delinquency. 1 in every 5 renters is behind on their rent, but it was getting worse. So started digging and digging. I went into kind of product discovery mode and ultimately realized that the cause of this debt was really the result of one of 2 things: a life event, someone moved into an apartment, lost their job, et cetera, could no longer afford the unit, or some level of fraud or a poor decision at the gate, meaning screening. And that really led me down this path of how are we screening renters today, what's working, what's not. And that led me to 100.
Fascinating. I mean, let's put some numbers to the issue here. According to a recent survey from the NMHC, revealed that 93% of rental housing providers experienced fraud in the past 12 months. Additionally, 70% reported an increase in fraudulent applications and payments during the same period. This is a prevalent issue. I mean, it's also, depends by region, but for example, Dallas experienced an average fraud rate of just under 13%, which is the highest in the country. Seems like Texas is great for rental fraudsters. But Caren, what was the aha moment that led you to focus on renter fraud? And how has that shaped 100's mission?
That's a great question. Show me another problem that 93%, over 93% of all operators have experienced in a year.
Wow.
Insane, right? So when we look at something that's like, okay, we want something that's a big, hairy, audacious problem to solve, fraud is top of mind for every single operator I spoke to, and I've spoken to many over the course of the past year. So it's not very often you get to come across something that is a top 2, top 3 problem to solve inside of like a, calendar year or within the next year or 2 period of time. So for me, it was really exciting to jump in and be a part of something that is very much top of mind now. And by the way, is incredibly expensive to not devote a team to kind of, attempting to solve in the near future.
Put some numbers to it. How much is this costing, especially the national landlords, in terms of either bad debt or unpaid rent or eviction costs?
Yeah. So on the debt and delinquency side, folks are writing off like inside of a given portfolio, upwards of $4 million a year. I believe the number was 4.2 million. When you extrapolate that across the multifamily industry, that's billions of dollars. Beyond that, though, like when you actually look at the amount of money it costs per unit, it's insane. I mean, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars, like to get a decision wrong, tens of thousands of dollars, even closer to probably $50,000 to $100,000, depending on the state you're in, the jurisdiction you're operating in, where evictions typically would take sub 90 days. They're now stretching to upwards of a year. So, those numbers are only standing to go up over time. But you're talking about millions of dollars that's being written off each year across portfolios. So like when I think about like problems to solve, I always try to look at like, okay, what's a big hairy problem and what's a really expensive problem? This checked both of those boxes. Everyone's experiencing it. Oh, and by the way, incredibly expensive to not address it.
Absolutely. And it's that decision at the onset of the lease, right? If you make the wrong decision then like you're stuck in that marriage with a fraudulent renter. The fraud is a spectrum, as everything in life, from minor misrepresentations to outright fraud. Can you walk us through renter fraud today and what multifamily operators are facing?
Yeah. So there's obviously like not all fraud's created equal, right? You have identity fraud, you have financial fraud, you have first party, you have third party. I'd say generally speaking, where we wanted to start was on the identity side, because identity is so insidious because it's very rarely just identity. It's usually identity and, right? So we spent some time really trying to understand, okay, what is, and again, in our conversations with operators, it's been what type of fraud are you experiencing? It's often identity and financial. And when you look at some of the stats around the type of fraud, about 70% of those operators, citing that same NMHC survey, 70% experienced identity fraud, upwards of 80% experienced financial fraud. But we really wanted to start by nailing the beginning, which is this person who they claim to be? Because if they're not, that typically lends itself to all sorts of challenges beyond that.
Fascinating.
I actually just applied to a lease as Jeff Berman, and they let it through. It was extraordinary.
Well, you're also able to break into my cell phone because we look so alike.
That's true. That's
To be
true.
fair.
Biometric doesn't work because we
Not
look
for us.
exactly alike.
I was about to say they must be using biometrics because
So
immediately.
let's
right.
talk sort of frontier tech and how that's impacting your business. What's the biometric application of this? And then from my understanding, given the new wave of generative AI and LLMs, the fraudsters seem to be getting more sophisticated with their ability to create
Deepfakes.
fraudulent documents en masse. They're just sitting, eating their hill country barbecue in Texas, and they're running these LLMs that are just out trying to defraud people at a rate that we've really never seen. So can you walk us through how Gen AI is impacting your business on that side? And then also, how do biometrics later on potentially play into this business?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally, like, it's becoming more and more important, and this, is only growing to prove you are who you claim to be, and that's only going to become harder over time. I'd also say, we're not helped by the fact of, like, once one fraudster kind of finds a way in or finds a new path, they exploit that and share it quite openly on social media, TikTok and otherwise, as the kiddos do, and share openly how they've been able to fraud, whether it's a particular property or a particular area or some new style that they've been able to sort of penetrate and pierce. So it's a constant battle to try to get ahead and stay ahead of what folks are doing. So, like, when we think about starting with identity, we felt like, let's not try and reinvent the wheel here. Let's look at an area where the stakes are the highest, which led us down the path of aviation and ultimately led us down the path of partnering with Clear, the airport security company, or what started as the airport security company and is now becoming a universal identity company. Being able to leverage technology that already exists and does a great job keeping us safe in the skies where the stakes are the ultimate, like, height, right? We felt like that was a great opportunity to parlay that, make it speak multifamily.
I think that's an amazing and admirable standard to bring to the multifamily industry, especially because if there's an industry that I admire, and I know we love shitting on the airline industry and delays and the Wi-Fi in the planes don't work and the food, but if there's a high standard that is spread out across virtually every country on earth, that's what the airline industry has really brought, because the only way this industry is able to operate is with a literal zero death expectation. Like, that's an unbelievable level of collaboration. Whenever something happens to a plane, we all find out about it. Why? Because it never happens. And everyone shares. Imagine if in a hospital, when there's a malpractice, all the hospitals would share what happened and we could all learn from it and avoid it from happening in the future. That's what the airline industry has done. And I think it's remarkable that 100 has partnered with Clear, to bring that great level of identity verification for multifamily.
Thank you. Yeah. And, it's not just there. I mean, we're super proud of the partnership we've been able to create, but it's also really pulling in best practices that have existed, not just in aviation, although that's very important, but looking at fintech, looking at mortgage underwriting. Like, are there pages we can take out of playbooks that might already exist, but maybe just haven't been applied in this way? And being able to do that, to not just verify this person is who they say they claim to be, but that they make what they claim to make. They're ready and willing to sort of honor these intentions because we have a nice snapshot of them being able to do that previously. And therefore, we believe that they will be able to do that moving forward. So that's, being able to have a full picture on an individual is increasingly more important.
Support for this episode comes from Pacaso. Pacaso is transforming the $1.3 trillion vacation home market. Their innovative marketplace makes buying, co-owning, and even reselling luxury homes seamless. Here's the reality. 75% of Americans dream of owning a vacation home. and 40% want one within the next year. Pacaso is redefining luxury vacation home ownership and capturing this huge demand by making it easier than ever before. And now, for the first time, they're opening the door to a unique investment opportunity for accredited and non-accredited investors who can purchase stock in Pacaso through their latest growth round. That means you can join their cap table alongside top-tier investors like SoftBank, Mavron, Greycroft, and Fifth Wall. With over $100 million in gross profits and more than 1,500 happy homeowners, Pacaso has already established itself as the market leader. Now you have the chance to own a piece of this high-growth company built on a strong foundation of a vibrant community of co-owners and housing industry leaders. If you want to be part of reshaping the vacation home market alongside top-tier investors and the former CEO, co-founder, and executives of Zillow, visit pacaso.com/invest. That's pacaso.com/invest. Pacaso, making luxury vacation home ownership accessible for everyone. Disclaimer. Investments in Regulation A offerings are speculative, involve substantial risks, and are not suitable for all investors. Read the offering circular at pacaso.com/invest before investing. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Please consult your financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Talk more about your tech stack. I mean, clear partnership, that's unbelievable to start with. But, how do you integrate with existing tech stack for property managers?
Probably a big bit. And, this crew's talked about this before. They've talked about the importance of it, but the ability to integrate with the systems operators are already using, right? I'd say definitely as I look at how PropTech has evolved and how the industry has shifted, integrating with the major PMS and accounting software, it's just table stakes now, right? That said, I do think we've created a bit of an issue where because it is table stakes, we've sort of rushed through it a bit as an industry of like, oh yeah, check, we've got that. And then, you look under the hood and it's like, oh, no, they don't got that. So we really taken a measure twice, cut once approach, and we work really closely with our partners to make sure that the integrations we have are not only stable, but they work as intended, down to like the fields are transmitted where they're supposed to be. Because if it doesn't map correctly, if it's creating more friction and more work for the operator, they will not use it and they will not continue to use it. So it's something that I cannot underscore enough. It's so important to get right.
Yeah, talk about your core business model and how do you ensure alignment with your customers' success?
So when we think about business model, I think a big part of what we're trying to do at 100 is we don't just want to do things that have always been done because that's the way we've done it. And I think business model is an area where we're probably going to really differentiate ourselves. A big thing that we heard in our roadshow over the past year is, oh, I use this for that. And oh, by the way, I pay a per unit per month price. And that often results in my paying for units that aren't in service, given how often units turn in a given year. And we thought to ourselves, wow, it's a bit of a head scratcher that doesn't really align incentives. And what we found is because of that, operators weren't necessarily rolling out a full stack solution because they couldn't afford it or the economics didn't make sense. And, we wanted to kind of put an end to that. Obviously, if we build something that works and adds value to an operator, they should be able to use it everywhere. They should be able to standardize processes. They should be able to combat fraud in an area where they've been experiencing it to the nth degree, to even areas where it's always kind of bubbling underneath the surface. Maybe it's not as acute as an area like Dallas or Atlanta, but it's still painful. So the way we built our model, it's really to align incentives. It's more of a transactional process. It's trying to free up the operator where they're able to only charge based on what they use, and they're only paying for units and service. So the idea is we make money when they make money, aligning incentives and not having to pay that price per unit that most folks are kind of tasked with.
Only pay for what you need. Liberty. I guess it works when they do those songs, the insurance companies. In terms of, being innovative, I think something worth mentioning is how, you mentioned this roadshow that I've done. I don't know if that's common or that's been done before in the way you guys have approached, your market launch, because you've been building focused heads down and building 100, and you've gone to market now and you've not only caused a splash, you've really basically owned this space since you announced yourselves publicly, not only with branding the F word fraud, the biggest pain in multifamily, but also, just everything from fraud around and find out. I think that's so creative, but also, just laser focused in terms of what the issue is and how you are, just prepared to tackle it for multifamily operators nationwide. Talk about more your strategic relationships and partnerships. Behind the stage, you mentioned how some unexpected relationships have resulted in putting together quite a team.
It's a weird thing, and I'm curious if you all have, if you've covered this yet, if we've even experienced it yet as an industry of like the second, third go-arounds of like founders, operators jumping back into the space again. Because I feel like, and I don't want to, toot our own horn here, but I do feel like we are a bit early to the party in that regard, where we've got first company started was Funnel, got a few members of that band back together and said, hey, that was fun. Let's go jump in, do it again. Let's do it better. Let's do it bigger. And we also teamed up with some folks from Knock who, Jeff will remember this from the boardroom. I mean, our biggest, most formidable competitor. And like, Jeff, you can attest to this. I mean, we were fierce competitors. So the fact that like we've got, early bands of both companies in a room working together is pretty extraordinary.
It's like a super group, Busted and McFly, McBusted. None of you get that reference.
It's like the traveling Wilburys of Proptech.
You guys are so weird.
Traveling Wilburys. It's a band. It's got George Harrison, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, Roy Orbison. It was a super.
I'm more of like a Backstreet Boys, NSYNC collab kind of guy, and that's what Caren is doing. It's more Backstreet and NSYNC than
it's definitely
than drug-addled aging rock stars that are probably deeply problematic.
More like Nick Carter and Justin Timberlake,
There you go.
Because Nick Carter's not remotely problematic.
No, not at all. Right. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. I walked right into that one, didn't I? Yeah. So it is kind of a super band, I guess. But it's interesting because I do feel like we have folks here who are part of the Funnel Band, the Knock Band, Smart Rent, the Guarantors. I don't know if there are a whole lot of companies yet where it's like, okay, yeah, we did that once or twice before. Let's jump back in and do it again. But it is interesting that we're teaming up with folks so closely who, again, were our sworn enemies several years back. And, it was funny how it all came about because those early conversations were like, man, I didn't expect to like you as much as I do. Damn it.
There's something so fundamentally masochistic about PropTech startups that I've never seen anybody successfully leave the industry, even those desperate. It's like in the Godfather, just when I'm out, they pull me back in.
Where am I going to go?
Like Godfather 3 with the industry. Like I've never seen anybody. I've seen people come into it from other sectors. I've never seen anybody successfully get out of it.
Well, this is the business we've chosen.
The business has chosen us. I think Oasis got back together, and more importantly, and this one's for Zach, Roger Federer penning a letter for retiring Rafa Nadal. Anyway, talk about raising financing in PropTech. What trends are you seeing in PropTech fundraising? How did you navigate them with Get 100, and any advice for founders out there hoping to raise their financing round? And the VC investors in the room, feel free to chime in.
Zach, Jeff, I want to hear your take because obviously you're on the other side of this and, you're hearing pitches and, all of that way more often than I am. I can only speak to my experiences and obviously the one most recently. I will say it's incrementally easier the second time around. It's also better to understand who you're teaming up with. I think when I look back to the Funnel days, everything was new. Everything was like the first time we, attempted to do something. So it was like driving the car and changing the tires at the same time. And, there were some things that we did well, there were some things we did poorly, but it was really difficult, not just from a team perspective, but even from an investor perspective of, again, I think we got lucky and, we had an amazing cap table, but I hadn't worked with those folks previously versus now we have all this experience to draw on. So I'll use Jenny from Freestyle as an example. I've known her, I've worked with her for 10 years. We're now working together again. It's amazing to be like, oh, wow, like it's the same in many ways, but different. Like, she tells me all the time, she's like, oh, wow, like you're different and like the best ways. And not that it was bad before, but like you're maturing, you're like a repeat founder, like you're reacting to things differently than you did, which is great, because like growth, but it's fun to work in that way. It's fun to like go back and have conversations with Zach, and like we have all that history, professional, we know each other, we know how we're going to behave in good times and in bad. So it's nice to have that history and get to apply it to something new. As it relates to advice for founders, I mean, build the relationships early and often. Like a lot of founders come to me and they're like, so I'm about to raise money. And it's like, how come I didn't know you 6 months ago, a year ago? Like you should be, what's that Mark Suster quote? I invest in lines, not dots. Be that line, like show that trajectory. It's not just about when you're out in market raising money, because if you're introducing yourself to an investor, then you're too late.
I agree with everything you said. And also, because I'm dealing with this now, it helps when you're not an asshole. People always talk about how VCs should be cognizant that founders have feelings. And if they reach out to you, give them the courtesy of a written reply or a call or whatever, even if it's a no. And I agree with that. I'm that type of person. I get a lot of unsolicited correspondence from founders looking for money, advice, whatever, that don't necessarily fit our mandate. And because I consider myself a gentleman and I think it's table stakes, I will respond and act appropriately and accordingly. And I've met recently a number of founders who the arrogance is so wild. And it's just like, I remember years ago, people asked me, like, what is the criteria for you to invest in someone? And I always say, I have to like the person. And Caren is a deeply likable, dare I say, lovable person. And full disclosure, Amber Creek is not an investor in 100. We were an investor in Funnel. But the relationship starts out so positive, and that's part of the reason why I think, Caren, you were able not only to get the retinue of investors that you've surrounded yourself with, but also the people on your team that come from various companies that you were once competing with. That says a lot about you.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, no, listen, I think it requires a certain amount of, maybe it's humility, but I don't know, like looking at someone and saying, holy shit, that skill set existed under two separate companies and now we get to pull it under one roof. Like that's friggin' awesome. Not everyone thinks about it that way. I do. And I'm willing to admit, like when someone is smarter, stronger, better in a certain area, like I want that in my house. I don't feel threatened by that, but I think some people don't operate that way, unfortunately.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. 23 and 24 have been the two lowest years that I've experienced in the sector since 2015 in terms of venture capital investment into this category. The peak was, not surprisingly, 2021, but both 23 and 24, although it's stabilized, are below 2015 and 2016 levels. And if you inflation adjust, they're way below. So it's much, much harder to obtain capital in the category if you are a first-time founder, for sure. And a lot of the available capital, I would say, in the venture ecosystem is getting consumed by foundation model Gen AI businesses, which require a tremendous amount of capital, a tremendous amount of GPU capacity, and those businesses. So the available capital in the ecosystem, the Proptech ecosystem has remained actively investing. We've been actively investing. Jeff's been actively investing. But if you look at the generalists, the pool of generalists investing in the category has diminished, especially because of this new wave of super capital intensive, but theoretically very promising foundation model based LLM and chip companies that have gotten the bulk of the attention from the generalist VC community. And then you have a handful of generalist VCs who have effectively gone out of business or been bought by another fund or sort of zombie funds that are still claiming to be in market and allocating capital, but they're really not. So it's been tough if you're a first-time founder to raise in this year and 23, and also for the majority of 22. The 22 numbers are skewed because Q1 was still sort of a booming. I would say to counter that, and Caren's a great example, there's an unprecedented surge in very talented repeat entrepreneurs who are remaining in the space and assembling teams that are top notch, and they're showing a velocity of product development, sales development that dwarfs what their initial businesses did. And so now may not be the best time to be a first-time founder in PropTech, but it may actually be the best time ever to be a repeat founder or a high-level executive from a Zillow who really knows what they're doing, spinning out, or Autodesk, pick your big company, spinning out and starting something, right? I think if you contrast where the space is today versus 2015 when we started Metaprop, the total market cap of public equities in the category back then was $50 billion. The total market cap now is $350 billion. The total number of employees in the sector has gone up 10x. So the talent pool is just so much greater. So if you're a first-time founder, come see me. Maybe we can get you into our accelerator program, but it's going to be harder to get a multi-million-dollar allocation just because we have a lot of folks who are coming back to the well. And even if it's relatively early in their second or third company's trajectory, they've shown the ability to assemble a team, build a product, sign up partners at a tremendously accelerated rate. And that the confidence and the conviction, to back those founders, even at valuations that are sort of back to, in certain cases, where they were.
I would absolutely agree with that. Like, I talk to founders about this often. I think if we were starting funnel, or like I was part of that journey now, and I think about where I was back then, I didn't come from real estate. I didn't have a Rolodex. I didn't really know who to hire. I didn't have that stable of folks. We would have failed. And that's not to suggest that funnel was always freewheeling good times up and to the right. It wasn't. We figured it out. But I think we were able to figure it out and effectively buy ourselves some more time because we were so early to the party. I don't know if we would have had success as first-time founders operating in PropTech without any prior experience today.
Fascinating. I mean, I think there's never been a better time to be let go from big tech or big prop tech and come found your own company, because the pool of capital is, like Zach pointed out, unprecedented compared to what we had in the previous cycle, but also the amount of issues that are yet to be resolved in our space are there for the taking.
Could I also say one thing, Edward, too, just on like the advice for founders, because I think it's important for people to remind themselves of this. Zach, Jeff, I love you both, but you guys are in the business of saying no. And like, that's your world. And like, I feel for you because you say no a hell of a lot more than you say yes. Like, that's just the nature of it. It's a volume play. I think entrepreneurs forget that sometimes. And like, I've seen founders really like take things personally or beat themselves up. And sometimes it's just as simple as, again, like, it's hard to hear that your baby's ugly again and again. That's the nature of the beast. And I think people forget just the sheer volume of companies a firm is looking at in any given year, let alone any given month. And I think, particularly as a first-time founder, it was hard not to take the no's hard, right? And like feel like, oh man, like what am I doing wrong? But again, it's just finding the right investor at the right time. So like Jeff, with my first company, what did you say no twice? One time? It was once or twice. Like, and again, because Jeff is not an asshole, to the contrary, quite a gentleman, I took the company back to him. And this is back in Funnel, where it was like, listen, like it wasn't the right time then. We believe it's the right time now. But again, a no isn't a no forever. And a no, it's like, it's part of the game. So just don't get too discouraged when it happens.
Totally agree.
This episode is brought to you in collaboration with Blueprint, the future of real estate. A few weeks ago, in September, Jeff and I participated in the largest, most global gathering of industry leaders and innovators leading the charge in changing the built environment, from construction to transaction, for 3 days of networking, learning, and ecosystem advancement in Las Vegas. With trillions of dollars of assets and the best global innovators under one roof, the future of the built world happens at Blueprint. Blueprint 2025 will take place at the Venetian Las Vegas from September 16th to 18th. Learn more and join the interest list at blueprintvegas.com. That's blueprintvegas.com. See y'all there.
Going back to Jeff's point before about, don't be arrogant, don't be an a-hole. As founders, I think founders are incentivized to have that unwavering confidence, belief in themselves, in their idea, and to keep, shaping that idea based on feedback. There could be certain firms, and I'm not really thinking of anyone in particular, but on the VC side that may unwittingly encourage this kind of, and there's a fine line between self-confidence and crossing to being arrogant, cocky, but could it be that there's also, because you get a lot more no's than yeses, and again, that is also life, gotta celebrate the small wins because big wins don't happen often, and you usually get more losses on the day-to-day, or, we as humans think of the negatives more than the positives in certain cases. But could it be that also that arrogance is incentivized in some way by backing certain founders out there?
You guys tell me, is there a correlation?
I used to think I just don't want to deal with anybody who's arrogant. But if I look at the people who have built truly gigantic businesses historically, those people seem to me, I'm not close to anyone who's built a $250, $100 billion business yet, but they seem, many of them, to be very arrogant and just brimming with confidence. I think,
right, but I think Zach, there's a difference between brimming with confidence and being an asshole.
Totally. Yeah.
Like we have a few founders in our stable that are absolute killers, and we all know who they are. But I would go as far to say that none of them are assholes. Yeah, they're very self-confident, very assured. You could say that some might say, "Oh yeah, that guy or this person is arrogant," but they're not assholes. And that, I think, again, there's a fine line.
Yeah, I think you have to be ruthless without being mean and unnecessarily treating people poorly just to do that. But I think one has to be absolutely ruthless to build a really, really large company, and has to be very comfortable doing things on an almost daily basis that make 99% of the population, including me, cringe. You have to be willing to just fire a person very quickly. You have to be willing to aggressively pursue a sale to the realm of filing restraining orders.
Are you talking about me? Did I tell you that story?
That was a nod to you getting
Appreciate that.
a restraining order in your last business. Thank you for picking it up.
Appreciate that.
So most people, again, this is why most people shouldn't start these types of businesses. And I think in the last boom, there was this wave of, anybody can, anybody should. It's like, not everybody should do this. Most people actually shouldn't. People have to be willing to go that extra mile into a realm of discomfort, right? Because if they don't feel the discomfort, then to Jeff's point, they're probably either an asshole or a sociopath, right? They have to be so comfortable sitting with so much discomfort about their behavior and what they have to do to get to where they want to go, that it really does take a special kind of individual. I think it's possible to build a $50 million business without being like that. But once you want to get into the billions, you have to be absolutely ruthless. And it's Jeff's point. It's challenging to be ruthless and not let that spill over right into asshole-ish behavior.
100%. Caren, last but not least, collaboration superpower. If you could choose one person, historic or living, to do a partnership with, who would it be?
This is going to be a weird one, so bear with me. Betty White. She is a legend. She broke barriers, and she did it while being equal parts trustworthy and sassy. And I love it.
And not an asshole. She lived till 99 years old.
God bless her, man. Like, she would be like my Jeff Goldblum of, like, if we had like a brand ambassador, it would be Betty White.
Amazing. She didn't get to 100. Damn it.
She was damn close. She was damn close.
I wonder if she's secured her digital identity. Maybe you can get her deep fake and just say, I didn't make it to 100. You better get 100.
Better get.
Betty White.
Oh,
Don't be like
okay. I
Betty.
see a new
Oh,
marketing initiative.
no, Betty. She was
Wow.
18 days away from 100.
Yeah. Painfully close. Yeah.
Rest in power, Queen. Zach, do you have a collaboration superpower for us today?
I do. And, the hundreds of millions of people who listen to this podcast on a weekly basis, they'll know that I've been mainly focused on tennis coaches for the
And
past.
Chinese emperors.
But we had Remen from Pacaso on the program. He took me back to antiquity when he said he wanted to collaborate with King Cyrus the Great of Persia. So I'm going to go on an antiquity phase here. And my first one is going to be Parmenides. So people don't know about Parmenides, but he was a pre-Socratic philosopher. He was from what was then known as Magna Graecia, which was the southern part of Italy. So in modern day Basilicata Campania region. And he only wrote one book of poems that survives. It's called On Nature. He was born in about 540 BC. So a really long time before Socrates and Plato. He was heavily influential for the philosophy of Socrates and Plato. He sort of invented philosophy, and he was in a constant intellectual battle with the famous philosopher Heraclitus. Parmenides also, there's a lot of evidence. He experimented quite a bit with psychedelic journeys.
And cheese.
Really,
He was the inventor of Parmesan cheese.
So he's really the first person to blend philosophy and spirituality. And a lot of people credit him with basically inventing modern philosophy. And Plato gave him quite a bit of credit and wrote about him extensively. So I think it would have been super cool to get a vibe. You have to put yourself in this vibe. These people have sailed across a decent part of the Mediterranean from Greece to colonize this part of southern Italy, and they set up this whole community, but it's heavily influenced by what was going on in Italy at the time, the Romans, the Etruscans. So you have this really interesting mix, which really gives birth to modern Greek philosophy. And it's sort of fascinating to me that Greek, what we consider ancient Greek philosophy, is really, it's Greek people of Greek heritage, but doing it in modern day Italy.
That was the ultimate tangent, because nothing in that would, I don't understand why you'd want to collaborate with him. That was a great history lesson, but how would he help you build your venture capital firm?
He would
be an amazing
the best
fundraiser.
Executive coach in history.
Executive coach. There it is. Okay.
There
the Betty
is.
White of philosophy.
This guy would be.
It takes
this guy
Zach Aaron's twin to pull it out of him.
This guy would take. He would. No disrespect to Jerry Colonna, but he doesn't hold a candle to fucking Parmenides. I mean, come on.
Listen, I mean, have you spent a half hour with Jerry Colonna? Okay, it'll change
I would like to do his equine therapy. I'd like to spend a half hour with him and a horse. That's my goal.
Can we end on that?
No, Jeff has to give his collaboration superpower.
Oh, my collaboration superpower. I'm going to just be consistent, man. Elon Musk. I love him. I love him so much. He's the Doge. He's the Doge.
Are you talking about First Lady Elania?
It's a dream of mine, actually, Jeff, to send you to Mars.
One-way ticket.
Permanent. Yeah, one-way ticket. So I hope you get to collaborate with him.
That's what it's like being friendly competitors.
I thought about it.
Caren, where can Tangent listeners learn more about Get 100 and connect with you?
You can follow us on LinkedIn. It's Get100 You can email me anytime. It's Caren with a C at get100.com. Thank you for having me, guys.
Caren Maio, CEO and co-founder of Get 100, fast track approvals, cut fraud, and rent smarter. Thank you so much for coming to Tangent Proptech today and enlightening us with your journey, wisdom, and exciting new company.
Thanks for having me.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review Tangent, and share the show with a friend. This episode is produced by me, Edward Cohen. Thanks for listening to Tangent Proptech. And remember, collaboration is our superpower. So stay curious and always be learning.